thank you very much, and I would also like to welcome everybody here to this very interesting conference. I have to say I appreciated very much how this conference has been structured. This morning we had a very good, let's say, agenda from WTO over concrete examples, research and applied projects in developing countries, coming up to the voluntary private standards issues. And now I'm happy to tell you a little bit about a donors agency activity in this field. To start with, I would like to briefly go what I would like to present to do right now. First of all, the Seco approach, an introduction to Seco's approach on economic development cooperation, then what we are doing against climate change, then the different fields of intervention, and then also concrete contribution to the reduction or to the carbon footprint measuring and the conclusions. So I don't know whether you are familiar with the organizational setup in the Swiss administration, but the State Secretariat for Economic Affairs corresponds to what is normally a kind of a Ministry of Economy, but at the same time it's also the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Trade. So it's quite a vast portfolio. In addition to that, we are also responsible for economic development cooperation, which makes sense because it is a center of excellence for economic issues, trade issues, investment issues with developing countries and countries in transition. We manage an overall yearly budget of about 300 million Swiss francs, of which about 30 million are focused on climate change activities. Our goal is actually to help a better integration of our partner countries into the global economy and thereof promote sustainable economic growth. We think that the better inclusion of these countries into the global economy will strengthen the whole global trading system as well as the environmental conventions and the core labor standards of the ILO. Our activities are implemented either bilaterally or together with international financial institutions like the World Bank and the regional development banks, but also selected UN organizations, the private sector, the NGOs, and obviously also the WTO. In addition, we support the partner countries to assess the economic consequences of climate change and to implement adequate economic measures. We have heard before that there is a challenge for our partner countries to deal with these issues. Not all partner countries have so developed institutions as we have had a very good example of Colombia. This is, I would say, unfortunately only an example which shows that the rule is confirmed by those who can really show that all these international regulations can be fulfilled. But for smaller countries, particularly in Africa or in Asia, as well as some Central American countries, this is still a big challenge to deal with all the issues and consequences. So what is our approach against climate change? Our final goal there is to support the development of a low carbon growth path. Actually, that's what we would really like to promote. Then reduce the consumption of fossil energy, shift to more sustainable energy sources, then contribute to the implementation of, let's say, the sustainable use of natural resources as it is conceived by the RED+ system, but nevertheless maintain economic growth in order to contribute to poverty reduction. but try to decouple actually the economic growth from the CO2 emissions. This sounds pretty interesting and well and convincing, but the devil lays in the detail. How to implement all these is a big challenge for all of us, not only for us, but also for our partner countries, which finally have to implement all these requirements. We believe very much that effective and efficient market-based mechanisms can contribute to the solution and therefore are very much needed. There is needed a system for incentives, positive investment climate. That means that partner countries have to understand that climate change is not only an environmental issue, but it's primarily an economic issue, a finance issue, and a resource issue, and therefore has to be addressed the right way. So it's not only an issue which should be negotiated by the ministries of environment, it really should involve all the stakeholders in these partner countries so that they really define the right policies. I remember when we started with the support to these partner countries in '98 already in order to help them to negotiate the subsequent negotiations and conferences of the party with regard to the implementation of the Kyoto Protocol. It was very interesting to see that for a lot of countries it was very strange to see that for a so-called environmental issue, apparently the Ministry of Economy, the Ministry of Planning, the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Energy or the Ministry of Finance should be part of. But actually it's what is very important, that the rules set in a country are really corresponding and contributing to a positive investment climate, because this is crucial if we want to attract, for instance, foreign investments in order to have a reduction in climate change emissions. Then particularly CO2 emissions trading systems are key in our view to overcome the current situation. So the target areas are industry, energy, transport and buildings. We from Seco, we support our partner countries in order to implement what is needed and handle these instruments, because we have heard today various times that capacity building, technical assistance is needed in order to deal with all these challenges. But also the access to new and environmentally sound technologies is key in order to develop further the issues. But you will only have access or transfer of environmentally sound technologies if you have a right scheme with regard to intellectual property rights, because if countries don't have an interesting scheme which covers intellectual property rights, it will be very difficult to transfer privately owned technologies towards these countries. Then in addition, also financial resources are needed, but economically handled approaches with loan, maybe guarantee systems and so on. And only a little part actually should be just a donation on grant basis, because a lot of investments are actually also in the medium and long term also economically viable. So what are the fields of intervention we are focusing on, because we can't cover everything at the end. So we are promoting the energy efficiency in the whole transmission process of the energy production, but also in the use of the energy by the industry, for instance, or by the agriculture sector or the processing units. In addition, there is a need for the support of the introduction of renewable energies. There are a wide range of activities we are supporting. But there is also the use of a sustainable use actually of natural resources. not only red, we heard a lot today about labeling schemes in the agricultural sector. It's also there where we are actually very active, because we have supported the development of a variety of these multi-stakeholder based private voluntary standard systems, and are also currently working with ISEAL in order to improve the whole system. At the end, to respond also to a question which has been addressed before, actually what's going on is that we very much share the view that all the technical assistance required for the implementation of the requirements of private voluntary standard systems, it is important to have these services in the partner countries themselves, to also have the services of auditing, verification, and monitoring in the countries themselves, because this will reduce drastically the costs of all these measures. In addition, it's important that donor countries try to join forces in order to offer all these services in a more coherent manner, because a variety of donors are offering these kind of services, but it's not really coordinated. So we are trying together with other donors here to really overcome the situations and offer a coherent service palette to the different partner countries. So what are the different instruments we are using? There is cleaner production. Cleaner production is our main approach, helping developing countries to have a know-how, technical capacities in their countries to promote the concept of a more resource-efficient production, where you use less energy, less water, and less primary material for the whole production process. Then you need these market-based instruments, kind of green credit loans or weather risk insurance systems. Everything exists already. You can apply it. You have to stimulate the market so that it takes it up. Then a very crucial target group which has to be addressed are the mega cities. They are big emitters of CO2 emissions, and therefore they are one source which should be handled in a more consistent way. Energy infrastructure should be improved, not only in efficiency terms, but also in terms of renewables. Then sustainable forest management is a key area where a variety of countries have something on stake and could really contribute to a reduction of CO2 emissions. And then also the whole emissions trading system should be strengthened, and therefore we are particularly working in these areas. And how do we do this? We have heard already before, know-how and technology transfer, capacity building for the different institutions, but also at company level, and then policy dialogue with partner countries in order to help them to set the right framework conditions. Now, with regard to very concrete approaches, let me just explain you a few projects we are supporting. So as I have already mentioned, these cleaner production centers we are supporting. This is a joint initiative which we implement together with the UN Organization for Industrial Development in Vienna, which is also working with the UNEP program in this regard. There are about more than 40 projects already all over the world existing. There is a whole network of these cleaner production centers where we can feed in new developments, new ideas, new information, and capacity building programs for the different countries. Then life cycle assessment. I think there we have here in Switzerland, thanks to the EMPA, a world-leading database. You will hear in the next session more about it. We are supporting the strengthening of this database also with more data provided from developing countries. because for the time being it's very much concentrated on data from Europe, and therefore this is needed if we would like to have some key information about some key products and their life cycle span. Then energy labeling, like it is the top 10, which is, has been developed in Switzerland and is working in a variety of countries, and has also been introduced in China. And then sustainable biofuels, also a cooperation with EMPA. Now, we have heard a lot before of the necessity of having a local expertise in dealing with these CO2 issues. Therefore, we have focused our cooperation, particularly in the Latin American countries, in helping them to offer the services they could then apply in their countries of residence. What is key actually in the modern discussion we have heard before, there is a fear of having new technical barriers to trade and maybe kind of issues around this, and therefore it's important for these partner countries to be able to offer already neutralized, carbon neutralized products. So this will help them to overcome all kind of barriers. For instance, industrial countries will put in practice because, for instance, if they would decide that they wouldn't buy in products coming from more than a certain kilometers of distance. So, I mean, there are some tools one can apply, and therefore it's important that these countries are able to deal with it, because we believe at the end that a free trading system will at the end be beneficial for all our partner countries, including ourselves. Then clustering of these kind of projects so that they can actually profit from each other. There are already so-called eco-parks, eco-cluster, industrial clusters, which have been established, and then low-carbon tourism destinations, which is also an issue with regard to services. So you can also apply this carbon footprinting on services. Then political advocacy, just to name a few areas. The Peruvian government also wanted to establish a carbon-free label, so we tried to help them how to deal with these issues. Then also, for instance, collaboration with My Climate in Switzerland in order to have a focal point in Peru. Then capacity building on different courses and workshops, particularly handling ISO 14064 requirements. Top 10 in China has been introduced actually in October last year. It's a consumer information system with benchmarking approach for consumer products with regard to energy use. It's a very interesting approach which has been introduced successfully in Switzerland in a variety of other countries. So based on a request from China, we helped them to introduce this in the home market. Then, in order to conclude, I would just briefly talk about the sustainability of biofuels, which is a very crucial area also for developing countries and also in relation to the EU regulations, and therefore we supported the development and the establishment of the Roundtable on Sustainable Biofuels. We helped together with the Inter-American Development Bank an assessment on carbon footprint on different types of biofuels. Then an interesting approach, hands-on approach for producers in developing countries, a sustainability quick check a tool for biofuels, which has been developed by EMPA and which has been diffused in a variety of partner countries so that they can assess whether it makes sense with their production to apply for the Swiss market or the European market. And then, last but not least, there was a small attempt to see whether sustainable biofuels based on organic and fair trade soy waste in Brazil would have kind of a nice, very tiny little niche market in Switzerland, and the Swiss fuel importer agreed then to import this fuel which has been produced on this waste. Conclusions: we have seen that CO2 emissions occur mainly in production and consumption. Nevertheless, there is a threat of additional hidden trade barriers. But we think, in contrast, trade and market-based approaches contribute to a reduction of CO2 emissions. But developing countries have to be ready for dealing with these issues, and therefore capacity building, technology transfer, and financial cooperation are needed. And we think that Switzerland could be a very good partner in this regard because of the experience in the financial and in the technological field. With this, I would like to thank you for your attention.